Um, so, as we're going to begin this week on a new unit, we're going to be talking about war and peace. And so, the first part of it is war, and we need to discuss why we fight in the first place. So, in Schoology, you will find a link to this document, which is basically for notes, but I'm going to be collecting it. So after this video, you'll submit this onto Schoology. But as we go through the PowerPoint and the notes, just document notes here and then submit it when we're done. All right. So why we fight is first step into knowing why wars start. So this comes from this link right here. I'm not going to click it, but if you would like to see a little bit more detail, you may. But that's where this comes from. So one of the first reasons why we fight is for economic gain. Countries that don't have enough resources fight so that they can get those, or others' wealth. So, pre industrialization, precious metals were needed for industrialization. And so we have countries who go into other countries to fight for those precious metals. Oils and minerals are the economic resources that are fought over today. Obviously, when we think about the United States, oil is a big reason why we have conflicts. When we think of Afghanistan and Iraq, oil is the biggest thing. And then water and food obviously might be a future economic resource that we would be fighting for, and we may be, seeing that a little bit in these times for sure. The second one is territorial gain. So put a picture of Risk here, and actually later this week you're going to be playing an online version of Risk. But basically, for living agriculture to create buffer states. So a lot of that was after World War One. Russia wanted buffer states with Germany so that Germany would have to invade these in order to get to Russia. So that was a big part of that. And then proxy wars in the Cold War. So Russia never actually had a conflict with the United States. However, both were trying to acquire uh, lands either for democracy or for communism. The third one is for religion. Most of this is very deeply seated. People don't really want to give up their religion and this idea that their religion is the correct religion and that everybody else should follow it. We see this with ISIS. They believe that their religion is the true religion and that um, everybody should follow it and they should have their own territory, their own country. And so they're fighting for that. A lot of this comes with nationalism, sometimes revenge, especially for an historical slight. So, if there was a war with Israel and it was religiously based, Israel may want to get revenge for that slight. Um, it could be different religions entirely, so it could be Christians versus Muslims, like we saw in the Crusades in history, or it could be different sects within a religion, and that's kind of what we see with Muslim and Islam. There are two different sects, and ISIS comes from one of those sects within the religion, and they are fighting themselves. So there could be some infighting as well based on the difference of beliefs. The fourth reason is nationalism, and this is where a country has a very strong pride for their own country. And we see nationalism in a lot of places. Even the United States has a form of nationalism. But basically, this version of it, what starts wars, is where a country views themselves as superior to another. And as a result, they invade to impart their superiority onto others. We see that in imperialism in history. So Great Britain thought that they were superior to the Indians, so they invaded India and took over them, had a colony. Same thing with a lot of Asian countries. A lot of this whole superior to another stems from racism, this idea that the white man is more superior to an African. So we see that in imperialism again, where they kind of took that whole idea of, hey, we're helping you out, and it stems from nationalism, this idea that we are better than everyone else. Revenge is number 5, and some of these are interchangeable, and some of these are definitely back and forth. I mean, you can have two different reasons for why they fight, but revenge is one that is retaliation, and you can kind of look at 9/11 as part of that, and why we went into Afghanistan and Iraq. We were attacked on 9/11. And although our country said that there were weapons of mass destruction, a lot of arguments can be made that this was done because of revenge. We wanted revenge for 9/11. This happens with the United States when we entered World War II. We wanted revenge from Pearl Harbor. So it's either to punish, to redress a grievance, or to strike back. Some of this can be a chain, as you can kind of see in this picture, where if the United States decided to declare war on a nuclear power, then they would then declare war nuclear power on us, and it turns into this thing called MAD. And MAD is basically mutually assured destruction, where when one nuclear power declares war on another nuclear power, you both are going to die because of the nuclear power. So it keeps countries from declaring war on each other, because it's this idea that, well, if I destroy you, you're going to destroy me kind of deal. So that's what MAD is, and it's this chain of retaliation, is back and forth, tit for tat kind of deal. Sixth is a civil war, and basically that's an internal disagreement over a lot of different factors. It could be who rules, it could be how the country should be run, what government should be had, if they want independence, and or secession. Like there's a group of people who are wanting their freedom from their own country. And so we've seen independence and secession in our country. We had our independence war in the 1700s, and a lot of people saw this as a civil war because a lot of people in the colonies at the time identified themselves as British people. And so, or British citizens. And so a lot of people have seen our independence war, as a civil war because we were fighting other British citizens. We also have seen secession. We've seen secession within our actual Civil War in the 1800s, where the South was not happy with how the North was ruling the country, and so they decided to secede, and a war ensued. And a lot of people actually see the Civil War, and you can argue that the Civil War was actually a war for independence for the South. However, in history, it's documented as a civil war, and it was based on secession. Africa, the reason why I have Africa over here, is one that has been through a lot of civil wars and a lot of internal conflicts, and it's still happening. I mean, you can see 2011, still fairly recent. A lot of this has to do with imperialism. Africa is dominated by a lot of tribes, and when Europeans came in, Europeans are the ones who made the political boundaries, and these tribes didn't really adhere to those. And so we see a lot of civil war in Africa because of those political boundaries, but they don't really see it as civil war because they're different tribes. So, from a Western point of view, we see it as civil war, but they don't. So just keep that in mind. So number 7 is a revolutionary war, where there is a revolt against rulers, or they're dissatisfied with their government or their leadership. A lot of this is caused by economic hardship from a section of the population. The lower classes are not having as much rights as other people. There's a lot of perceived injustices. And then sometimes, because of other unpopular wars with other countries, they have a lot of economic problems, and this is felt more intensely by the lower class. And so taxes are raised, etc. They rise up against their government, and they have a revolution. This, like I said earlier, can easily become a civil war, and that's why I said our Revolutionary War is sometimes argued as a civil war, because it's people who are fighting against their own people. And so that is basically the definition of a civil war. Number 8, another reason why we fight is deference, or, defense, excuse me, or preemptive war. What this means is basically we're going to attack before we get attacked. So it's military aggression in the name of defense, and sometimes this is seen as a just war because we don't want to be attacked. We're sure to be attacked, so we're going to attack them first. There's a lot of controversy with preemptive war because it's this idea that they might not have attacked us, but we attacked them first, and so we may never know whether or not they actually would have attacked us. And so, what this causes is a lot of mutually assured destruction, revenge type wars because we acted before they did, and then they just take revenge on us. So a lot of this mad, usually assured destruction, occurred because of the nuclear threat that happened after World War II. Nuclear bombs being dropped to end World War II, and then the Soviet Union developed their own nuclear weapons, and then the whole Cold War happened. So nuclear weapons are definitely a reason and a deterrence too. We're not going to attack very easily someone who has nuclear weapons because we don't want to be attacked with nuclear weapons too. So that's why North Korea is not technically allowed to have nuclear weapons because of the danger that that implies. However, while the UN says that they're not allowed to have nuclear weapons, we know they do. They're just not allowed. So, so hopefully you were able to get some of this. This PowerPoint will be in Schoology. The link will be link for the notes will be in Schoology. This video will be in Schoology. However, it is easier for you to get the notes. It's completely up to you. Um, and then starting this week, we're also going to be looking at this preemptive war, this defense, this whole idea of MAD. We're going to be watching a movie called Doctor Strangelove. It's an interesting movie, and I'll give you more instructions when that time comes. So I will sign off. I'll see you guys later.